Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Those of you that are here in person and those online, it's great to be with you today. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order and declare that we have a quorum. We normally do introductions. I think we will try to do those again, but we'll try to do them quick. And I apologize to folks online. I've never figured out how to do that very effectively, but maybe we can start with the council members and liaisons that are seated at the front. So Darren, maybe we could start with you. Just introduce yourself. And that's, again, folks, this is just so that you know who all the players are. If you've been meaning to talk to somebody that has a particular affiliation, this gives you the ability to know who those people are.
So Darren Hess, represent Public Water Suppliers.
Good morning, Jessica Wade, representing Bureau of Land Management.
Elizabeth Kitchens, representing Conservation.
Tyler Smith, I'm the military liaison with the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs.
John Crofts, Davis County Commission.
Angela Gong, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
Tim Hawks, representing Aquaculture.
Brad Perry, representing Northwestern Banff Shoshone Nation.
Leland Myers, Sewer People.
Tom Ward, representing municipalities.
I'm Jeff Richards. I represent the migratory bird production areas.
Heidi Hoven, Director of Gilmore Sanctuary and Vice Chair and Liaison of the Jordan River Watershed Council.
Trevor Nelson, Liaison Member from the Bear River Watershed.
Joe Havasey, Mineral Extraction.
Emma Whitaker, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
Lynn DeFreitas, Friends of Great Salt Lake.
Representative Jill Koford, House District 10.
Hannah Fries, Deputy Commissioner, Great Salt Lake.
Jeff Denblaker, Jacobs Engineering.
Maria Moncoeur, Northwestern Shoshone.
Andrea Nelson with Congressman Burgess Owens.
Amy Wicks with Utah Rivers Council and the Great Salt Lake Waterkeeper.
Eric McCulley, Watershed Scientist.
Marissa Weinberg, Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape.
Laura Vernon, Water Resources.
R. Jeffrey Hicks, Utah Airboat Association.
Bronte DeRoshi, Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust.
Deanna Baxley, the Nature Conservancy.
Nathan Dowgs, Cache Water District.
Georgie Corkery, Great Salt Lake Institute and Audubon.
Ben Steierman, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
We got Jen and Paul in the back, and we missed a section right here, right?
Bryce Pulver, SWCA Consultants.
Joel Williams, Division of Water Resources.
Jan Streifel, League of Women Voters.
Steph McGinnis, Division of Water Resources. Okay, I think that's got it. We won't try to do the online folks, but acknowledge we've got at least 25, as I can see it, folks online. We appreciate you being with us. I want to express my appreciation to Angela, who always does such a great job putting together agendas and herding cats. There are a lot of cats to be herded. Jen and Paul in the back. And folks in Salt Lake for helping with the AV to make this whole thing work. I did want to acknowledge, and I don't know if she's online, Catherine Cantor. Catherine is nominally will be representing Salt Lake County on the council, but she's got to go through the advice and consent through the Senate. So appointment by the governor and then advice and consent through the Senate. So it'll be a little bit of process, but I think Catherine will be joining us as a council member here in the next few months. So welcome to her. All right, so you all received a copy of the agenda, and we need to approve that agenda. I am going to make one proposed change. I've got to leave a little bit early, and I want to talk about the proposed project funding before I go. And so I propose that we move the update on the state water plan, so Stephanie McGinnis's presentation, to after the overview of fiscal year 26 projects. So I'm going to make that suggestion that we change modify the amendment, and when I leave, Leland has graciously volunteered to take over the gavel, so thanks for that, Leland. Volunteer, voluntold, one of those things, right? Okay, thanks, Leland. So can we get a motion to approve the agenda with that adjustment? Okay, we have a motion from Leland. Get a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll rule that motion carries unanimously, and we are our agenda is approved. Also, we have minutes dated January 12th. You should have received a copy of that. I haven't seen any suggested changes or to those minutes. Those they're really meeting notes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting notes? Jeff, thank you. Can I get a second? Second. Leland, second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I rule that motion carries unanimously. Okay, so it's been a momentous time for Great Salt Lake. In the past week, we've had not one but two presidential tweets on Great Salt Lake. So, woo! The second one out just yesterday. If you haven't seen it, managed to offend Canada, call a bunch of states to get together, but call out Great Salt Lake again. So, appreciative for that attention to this critical issue. We're going to start out with an update from Hannah Fries from the Commissioner's Office. We'll turn it over to Hannah. Thanks, Hannah, for being here.
Thank you. Is this good? Can you hear me? I don't have any slides to share with you today. I'm just going to talk for a minute, but I appreciate that tee up, Tim, about some of the things that I would like to highlight. As you know, we have Representative Koford here, so I'm not going to touch on legislation. I'm going to leave that to her. But we had a great year in terms of legislation for the lake and some new and exciting things happening that I think will make leasing an easier and better process to be able to get water to the lake, which is obviously one of our biggest goals. So we'll look forward to hearing from Representative Koford there. So I would just like to highlight for a minute what Tim Hawks mentioned about the federal interest that has been swirling around Great Salt Lake over the past couple of weeks, and our efforts and our collaboration with our federal partners to make the lake great again. So we did, Governor Cox had a good conversation with President Trump. And as part of that, I know there's been a lot of rumors swirling around about that conversation, but it is true that the state of Utah, through the Commissioner's Office and the DNR, did request $1 billion in federal funding. So I wanted to take a second and just highlight, we don't have that broken out into specific dollar amounts of what's going to go where, but just highlight some of the projects and some of the opportunities that are available that we would like to use those dollars if that comes to fruition for the state. So one of the areas that we would like to focus on is agricultural water leasing. And that's been a topic, so we would like to focus some dollars there. Ecosystem and habitat restoration, and that focus would be specifically on the removal of non-native invasive species. So think all of the Phragmites work that Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and Wildlife has been doing. If we can get some more dollars to continue those efforts, it's just such a massive need here on the lake, as you all know. There is a line item in there or a nod towards municipal water conservation. So continuing those efforts with our municipal partners, on our homeowners, turf removal and leasing opportunities from municipal partners as well. You also probably heard in the news that on the last day of the session, there was some legislation about the settling of the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. That has literally been 100 plus years in the making. The original lawsuit was filed in the 1920s. And so part of those dollars would be earmarked to finish out that settlement. Basically what that is, just in a nutshell, is there's about 22,000 acres that the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge already operates as federal lands that are actually state sovereign lands. And so we're looking at just making that switch so the federal government takes ownership and will purchase those lands from the state. So that's in the works. Another line item in the request was to look at engineered options for the lake, and think, if you heard in the strike team report, the information that we got from Utah State about water availability, particularly in the Newfoundland Basin. So if we can look at that with some of those federal dollars and what the possibility is to get some of that Newfoundland Basin water flowing back into the Great Salt Lake and what that engineering would look like. And then the last line item in that federal request was for habitat management, specifically to protect migratory birds and potentially endangered species. And so just wanted you to hear it from us that there are no surprises in the funding that we requested and in that request that was made to our federal partners. We definitely don't want to put the cart before the horse. We're not counting on this money. It's not guaranteed. But we did make that request to our federal partners and are looking forward to the opportunity to keep working with them. Can I answer any questions on that?
So questions from liaisons or council members, Brad?
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, hopefully that moves in the right direction. With the Bear River being in the 3 states, these tri-state areas, a lot of, like you said, a lot of that's federal. Do you envision that the Bureau of Reclamation may be a large partner in stepping up and handling that? Because there's going to be certain things that Wyoming wants that we don't need or want, but they're going to want to be a piece of the pie because of do you see any sort of that federal nexus, or are you all just requesting the federal dollars to come straight to the state and you disperse them?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think that there will be a federal nexus. I think we're anticipating it would play out similar to the $50 million that we were awarded that came through the Bureau of Reclamation. I don't know for sure, but that might also look like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Reclamation, and some of those other federal partners that we would work with as well.
Any other questions from council members or liaisons? Any burning question from the audience? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Hannah. Great update. Okay. Exciting stuff. So
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
you here.
Appreciate it.
So the next item on our agenda is a legislative update. Advocating for Great Salt Lake in the legislature is very much a coalition of the willing, a labor of love. I did it when I was there. Representative Ferry did it, and then Representative Snyder's had that laboring work for some time, and then this year, really carrying a lot of the heavy lifting is Representative Jill Koford, who's with us, and she's terrific and a true believer in the lake and has worked very, very hard to try to get some legislation through, and she's joined us here. We appreciate you being here, Jill, and we'll turn the time over to you. You can follow Hannah up there maybe, and we'd welcome just kind of an update what the session was like for Great Salt Lake.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for letting me be here and taking a few minutes. I appreciate it. Really, the focus this year for the lake was how can we deliver water to the lake? How can we remove some of those barriers and actually deliver water? And also, I wanted it to be a really positive session for the lake rather than, it's been a little tricky, right? And a little hostile. And my whole goal was to bring people together and hopefully show that we can all move in the same direction, and that, look, we all want the same thing. We want to save this incredible body of water. And how do we create and maybe mend some bridges and make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction? So my focus really came down to, well, 3 House bills that had to deal with water. The 2 specific to the lake were House Bill 348, which was dedicated water amendments. And in working with Teresa, the state water engineer, what we found is that the process was really cumbersome in getting change applications and in freeing up the process to actually move water to the lake. It was just taking too long. So working very closely with Teresa, we came up with a new application process called dedicated water. It bumps the applications to the top of the line, makes them a priority. It protects the underlying water right, and it just streamlines and speeds up the process to evaluate those applications. Teresa's office is looking at about 16,000 applications a year. So you can imagine that if you're number 12,342, just to pick a random number, and you're buried somewhere in the bottom of the pile and you're trying to dedicate water to the lake, that you're going to get lost in the shuffle. But if you have a prioritized application that bumps you up to the front of the line, then that can help speed up that process and deliver the water to the lake. It was a policy that we worked really hard on, and I think that we got it right. So it allows for temporary, it can be time fixed, it can be different seasons, but it allows for a lot more flexibility in that application process. The second bill was the leasing bill. And initially we started out just focused on Great Salt Lake and the Great Salt Lake Basin, but what we found is that would just muddy the waters a little bit in other basins. And so we wanted to create a statewide application process or a statewide leasing program, sorry, not application process, a statewide program that could be applied to the Colorado River Basin as well as the Great Salt Lake Basin, and also stand up a pilot program for leasing. So it's temporary, it's voluntary, it's market driven. It will be managed and run by the commissioner's office. It will create a new board that will evaluate those leases in an effort to kind of partner with ag and to make sure that they can look at their water maybe differently as a commodity that they put into a crop rotation. That was the aim and the goal of 410. It's a 2 out of 5 year leasing program so that we're not taking all the water out of ag, but that we're allowing farmers to look at it a little bit differently. And they can evaluate what the season looks like up front and make a decision really quickly whether or not they want to lease or if it looks like they want to grow. And it's really left to our partners in ag to determine what that looks like for them. We've had some leasing opportunities before and the uptake just hasn't been there. So working really closely with Hannah and with our ag partners, they were at the table from the very beginning to craft a program that works for them and also helps to kind of remove those barriers and get some water to the lake. The third bill that I sponsored was a data center, just a transparency and reporting. We want data centers in Utah. We need data centers in Utah. I think that we're in an arms race for AI really as a country. So it's an industry that has largely pivoted away from being very water intensive, but we just don't know how much water they're using. And so for me, this was an effort for them to be able to tell their story, to show how they're good partners and good stewards of our water, and to ensure that that's happening. So it requires some pre-construction communication and reporting to the state water engineer. And then it requires ongoing annual reporting. And it's for new data centers coming into the state. I will say that was not where I wanted the bill to land, but that's where it needed to land so that we could get it across the finish line. So it's anybody operational in the state from July 1st of this year and forward. And we'll monitor that and see if it's getting us the kind of information that we need. But in my opinion, we just need more data, more information. On the last night of the session, there was another bill that was, it was House Bill 349, I believe. It was Dave Schallenberger's bill. He had worked really closely with Teresa as well on that to have our municipalities get a 40-year plan for their water in place. It was, for those of you that have been in the legislative session, you know how crazy it gets towards the end and things can get stalled. So that bill ended up being swept into a land use bill that I was running so that we could get it over the finish line, and it passed. So I'm really looking forward to that. It was a big priority for Teresa, and at this point, anything Teresa asks for, I'm willing to try to bend over backwards to make sure she gets. She's a remarkable person and a great partner. I can't remember, let's see, Ray Ward had a bill. Tim, do you remember the number? It was about
247, I think.
247, maybe, about royalties from the brine shrimp. That was going into the Endangered Species Fund. Now that will go into the Great Salt Lake Fund to help with all of the work we're doing there. And I should mention that the leasing program and the Great Salt Lake Preservation Fund that we created, we can take private dollars. So that fund, I think, is really unique. It's an ongoing fund that gives us an opportunity to work with some of our private partners who want to help get water to the lake. There's a vehicle now for that to happen. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Representative, for being here. Questions we'll start with committee members or liaisons. Any questions for good representative? Great body of work in this session. Definitely progress. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, Representative. Brad Perry from the Northwestern Band of Shoshone. A lot of really good things said in there. And you talk about data and how much you're going to get to the Great Salt Lake, and some of the funding that you're looking at or some of the programs you want to implement from some of this legislation. Are you going to require monitoring of the water, like water meters, water monitoring, to ensure the lake is getting what it's getting?
You mean like in terms of the dedicated water and the water leasing program itself?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. that's been part of the challenge, right? Is to make sure that the water is actually flowing where it's supposed to be flowing. And Teresa has the ability to monitor that with a state water engineer and has been given that authority in rulemaking to make sure that whatever has been dedicated is actually flowing to the lake, that it's not being diverted downstream.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I totally understand. It's, just coming from a reclamation background, it's real easy to steal water if it ain't in a pipe, or if it's not metered, And so I would just highly encourage that. Just as an example, up on our site of 500 acres and so many CFS, we've purchased Atlas, which is what the USGS uses to monitor, and we have 7 monitoring stations, and we can have up to 25. So anyone in northern Utah along the river, like West Cache we're a part of, we want to encourage to let us set up these data centers so we can have real time and send it to, like you were saying, yourself and Teresa and everybody, because, we're working really hard to make sure we have so much, and we're so far up north, it's going to be a challenge as that water meanders its way down.
Right. Do you know, it's interesting. I spent a little bit of time with Teresa looking at the, because I have a lot of questions and I'm new to the space, trying to learn as much as I can. And asking those questions. Where are the gaps? What data do we have? What information don't we have? Where are the gaps? Who do we need to be metering, or all of those kinds of things? It's really fascinating when you get on the state engineer's water, like on her site online, and look at how granular she can get with the measurements and the water and the flow. We have really good information right now, and that's really down to the work and the groundwork that's already been laid. There may be a few places where we can tweak that, but that is really Teresa's mission and aim, is to measure that and to know where the water is flowing. And it's incredible when just how granular we can get on in-stream flows and everything and where it's flowing.
You guys use Atlas as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the system is. I just know on the website, and it's public facing. Anyone could go in and look at that, but the data is there and it's really good.
Yeah, we just all have to start sharing it with each other. We all have to start a repository to make sure it gets in there. That's what this group should be responsible for.
And meters, like secondary meters, all of that. I mean, in terms of residential and municipal water, we're working towards that too.
They say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? But I know that's a work in progress. I think in terms of these in-stream flow or leasing type things for the lake, I think the state engineer's office has always required metering in some portion of that. So that's usually part of the cost of doing that implementation. I think we got Leland and we got somebody else. So Leland, why don't you go ahead?
Yes. We appreciate what the legislature's done in pushing secondary metering. I think that's really important. We've done a number of studies that indicate the significant amount of conservation that's going to be needed in order for population growth to live within the existing water supplies, rather than to try and look at having to develop new water supplies, so that anything can go to the lake that's getting there now, as well as conservation adding to the lake, particularly out of the agricultural area. I know that in the past, there have been several bills trying to push conservation. We did a toolbox for municipalities to try and encourage them to look at significant efforts on conservation at the municipal level, at the homeowner level. We don't have a great degree of reception on those toolbox, getting people to look at it very well.
The coalition of the reluctant, I think, is probably the way to put it.
Is there, and it appears that, I know that at the legislative level, I'm getting to the question here soon.
Yeah.
At the legislative level, I know that there's been several bills ran by Representative Owens talking about some degree of I hate to use the term mandated, but strongly encouraged conservation. Do you think that's ever going to get legs enough to go anywhere? Because we probably really need that.
Yeah. I will say that I was just looking at some of the bills that Representative Owens ran that failed again this year. And I think the challenge is that many people in both bodies are reluctant to mandate so heavily on personal property rights. And that's the challenge that we're facing. And I would love to see that just happen naturally and voluntarily, because we live in the second driest state in the nation. It makes sense that we're looking for new ways to conserve. So Stephanie Pitcher ran a bill and asked me if I would be her co-sponsor, her floor sponsor on it. And it was mandating new state facilities. So not just new buildings to be 75% water efficient and to look at different turf. And that to me was an easy yes, because if we can't mandate ourselves as a state, how do we expect, like if we can't step up and set the example, how do we expect the rest of the state to want to voluntarily step in? So to me, that was an easy lift to say, yes, we're going to mandate that on the state level. It was fascinating to me to listen to the pushback that I got from some of my colleagues, and some of the ribbing that I took for that, because people were saying, well, can't they already do this? Well, yes, they can. But is it happening? I don't know. I can't tell you. But if I mandate it, I know that it's happening. And again, it comes back to me as a state legislator saying, in our facilities that I control, I'm going to mandate this because we're going to set the example. So I would love to see that. I know that we probably need to get to that, but I would love to see it become a voluntary thing where people just say, we live in a desert and we're going to be water wise. We're going to be smart. We're going to save outside. And if every person along the Wasatch Front could conserve, to your point, 30%, how much more water would we get to that body of water? A lot. So I'm trying to win over hearts and minds to get people to do that voluntarily. I don't know that you'll see the legislature mandate that, but I think you'll see people continually asking us to mandate it. So it's probably not the right answer, but we're working on it. And to me, we'll be more successful if we can win the hearts and minds of the people to say, this lake matters, we care about it, and I can do something. And what I can do is pull out some turf or plant different turf and stop watering so much. So
I appreciate that. It would be nice for the municipalities to be willing to allow that to happen all the time too, though. And that's part of the problem is that the municipalities, I mean, I live in Salt Lake City, and my neighbor across the street had a narrow park strip, took out all the grass. Salt Lake City came back in, and she put cement in part of it. And Salt Lake City came back in and said, take out the cement. And that's the wrong direction. When conservation, somebody's willing to do it, and then they're being told not to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I know that for some of the homeowner associations, there's been laws passed to try and allow people to be conservation minded. I think we just need more encouragement.
Yeah.
That's an editorial.
Thanks. No, thanks, Leland. Representative, you have time for 2 more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go Commissioner Crofton, then we got Warren Peterson online.
This is a softball question. Well, it's not a question, it's a comment and a thank you. So these data centers, especially the older ones, used enormous amounts of water. And thank you for sponsoring that bill and at least working towards making that more transparent. And I know that there's improvements being made with the data centers. So I think that transparency is going to help everybody, including the data centers, when they know that, they're under public scrutiny on, how much water they're using. So I think that was a really good bill. I know that you had to make some compromises on it, but even with those compromises, it was such an improvement. Thank you for running that. Thank you for doing that. I think that that'll have long-reaching benefits throughout the, with the Great Salt Lake, but with other issues as well. And being that we are the second driest state in the country, we should be aware of that. And so thank you for running that. I know that was a hard lift and you brought it home. Thank you.
Who knew that was going to be so hard? Yeah, and it almost died the last day of the session. So one thing just to note, right now we have 2 big data centers that are using a lot of water in the state. It's Meta and the NSA. Meta is retrofitting a lot of their older data centers to be more water efficient. And then the water that they're discharging, especially in Eagle Mountain, they're using to water, they're reusing the water to water some of their parks. So they're not a terrible partner. and they're moving in the right direction, and I appreciate that. And they actually came to me and said, this could be model policy. We like the way this is going. So I think they want to be good partners.
Thank you. One more question, Warren Peterson online.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I just wanted to comment to Jill that now the session's over, so you're back to having your own first name instead of rep. Is that fair? But I wanted to do a shout out to her to Representative Koford, because she didn't just go away and write bills. She worked not just day by day, but hour by hour with water users to try to get it right. It's a great example of how water legislation should be put together. And thank you, Representative, for your approach and for the work you've done. So I'm not even going to ask you a hard question. Just wanted to do that. Shout out to your example and the exemplary way you went toward putting these bills together.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Warren. That means a great deal coming from you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Representative. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for that process. You were really great about taking comment, working through a good process. So much obliged. Thanks for all your great work, and hope you're getting some time off to decompress just a teeny bit as you go right into a new campaign.
Allegedly, yeah. No, there's no campaign. Yeah, there's a campaign. Yeah, I'm running for the Senate, and I'll just throw that out there. I don't know. Anyway, here we go.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you for all of the work that you are doing. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is, again, we're going to flip-flop a little bit. We're going to have Stephanie talk about the state water plan as the big substantive agenda item that we have left. But I wanted to talk, we've had a steering committee. Now, as this group will recall, so the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council has the ability to direct $125,000. It comes out of the brine shrimp royalty, and so it goes into Sovereign Lands management account, and then this group has the ability to direct that funding. We've tried to make sure, because in the past sometimes we haven't fully obligated it. We've had, a study that just couldn't get done in time, and so that money lapses effectively. And so we've really made an effort with the advisory council to front load this project work up front and make sure that we're funding the right stuff and we're doing it early. And so that we can maximize the value of those dollars. So there's been a steering committee, a subset of the membership and liaisons that's met to talk about projects. We've allocated almost all of our funding, and I'll ask Angela to correct me if I miss any of this, but there's about $30,000 left unallocated. And so the steering committee undertook to make recommendations about how to spend that last $30,000. And the recommendation from that committee is to spend it in the following way. One is there is a groundwater study being done by Utah State in conjunction with a couple of project partners. Do you remember who else is on there, Angela? This is studying groundwater recharge and all these different things on the east side of Great Salt Lake. So kind of in the interface there. Do you remember who else is a project partner there? I'm putting you on the spot. I think it might be, yeah. Yeah. Oh, anyway, it's not just USU. It's I think there's some federal partners in there as well, but they're a little shy on their money, and so the recommendation was to take $10,000 of what's left and apply it to that study to help them wrap up that study. The other recommendation was $3,000 to sponsor the Issues Forum. Take a bow, Lynn, which Friends of the Great Salt Lake organizes every other year. And so a little sponsorship for that important convening of stakeholders. And then with the amount that was left, the recommendation was to give the $17,000 that was remaining to the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust to do leasing. That's not the only, it could go to this new fund, it could go somewhere else, but the recommendation from the group was to go to the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust. So the question here, and this will be a committee vote, we need the committee members to vote to approve that, and then that by statute, then that triggers basically that spend. But That's the recommendation from the working group. Any discussion to that or questions about that from the members of the committee or the liaisons? And did I miss anything, Angela, or mess it up at all?
No, that's right. I'll just show the slide so that people can chew on this. And it also shows the other options that the steering committee chose not to recommend. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, so this was kind of a refined list of a much broader list of potential things. Of course, a lot of ways to spend money out there. But one is we've been commissioning these films to tell stories about the Great Salt Lake. And so one of the ideas was we could just fund a few more of those stories. That Issues Forum sponsorship that we just described, the groundwater study that we just described, donate to the trust or donate to the commission's office to do leasing work or habitat work, redo the web page or come up with a dedicated page for Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. Ultimately, I think it was a little bit of a choose your own adventure, pick your menu, and that was the recommendation from the group. So any questions about any of those or the recommendations from the working group? Leland?
Just understand that problems with procurement at times create, at this point in time, something we have to be able to do quickly, and that's part of the dilemma.
Maybe with some of the issues, some of the stuff we've had before.
Yeah, in the past, we've gotten the project started late, and we can't even get through procurement issues to get the project awarded in time to spend the money. So that was part of the concerns on why those were picked, because those, we don't have to worry about it as much.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, please.
So I'm on the steering committee, and I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the two that we did not choose. It isn't that we don't think they're important. There's a current fund towards preparing videos of success stories around the lake. But we haven't seen the results of that yet. So that's something that if we like what we get, we can perhaps fund some more next year. And then that same thing goes for the dedicated web page. We all realize that's very, very important, but in the light of procurement and making sure that it's a really well done thing, we know it's important. And so this is something that we'll be looking forward to next year.
Okay, thank you for that additional context. Any other comments or questions about the recommendations from the steering committee? If not, can I get a motion from a council member to approve or modify? Leland? Leland moves to approve.
Second.
A second from Commissioner
Tom can
Crowe.
have it.
Thanks. All in favor, please say aye or raise. Aye. Any opposed? I'll rule that motion carries unanimously. Thanks for your time and discussion on that. And we hope to continue the good work to make sure to help in a small way. We're not talking big funding here, right? But over time, Great Salt Lake Advisory Council's done a lot of great work with fairly modest funding. So I'm proud of that work. Okay, so next is we are going to turn it over for an update on the state water plan to Stephanie McGinnis from Water Resources, who's here with us. And Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for being here. And we'll turn the time over to you. You do have a presentation, right? I think it's queued up.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Give me one moment and I'll get my slides up.
As Stephanie's getting situated, I forgot our official sign-in, so I'm passing around my notebook with all my stickers. So if it takes you back to 6th grade Environmental Science Club, that is the feeling I want you to have. So that's the sign-in for today.
Well, good morning. Thank you again for that introduction. My name is Steph McGinnis. I'm the State Water Plan Manager with the Division of Water Resources. And what I'd like to do with our time this morning is just give you a brief overview on the State Water Plan update that we're working on. So I'd like to start out by just getting everyone on the same page of what the State Water Plan is meant to accomplish. I'm going to give you the cliff notes here. The key components are all lined out in code. So if you'd like to dig in, there's the code. You can help yourself to a couple pages of reading. But ultimately, the State Water Plan, it's meant to serve as a framework to support informed decision-making by those that are shaping, managing, and depending upon Utah's water resources. The plan will identify current and future water resources. It will also recommend strategies and actionable steps. And we're trying to do this at the individual, local, and state level to address current challenges and also to prepare us for future uncertainties. This plan is meant to be informed by a wide range of stakeholders, and our team has really made a significant effort to get out there at the local level to get thoughts and priorities and concerns to help inform this plan so that we can hopefully help decision makers identify priorities and challenges and plan more efficiently. Sort of the goals or the outcomes that are lined out in statute calls for the plan to support our communities, our businesses, our agriculture, our recreation, and also to keep our environment healthy. And these are what really shaped the focus areas of our plan. So we have an entire chapter that's dedicated to healthy watersheds and ecosystems, one to vibrant communities, and one to productive agriculture. And I just want to touch on two things briefly that change how the state water plan is developed as a result of House Bill 280 passing in the 2024 legislative session. First off, the code now calls for a timeline on how often the plan is to be updated. In 1990, that's when we had the first truly comprehensive state water plan published, and it's been updated twice since then. But now code calls for the plan to be updated no less frequently than every 10 years. And the Division of Water Resources, we do have an internal goal to be updating the plan more like every 5 years. And I think that's really important that we're updating this on a regular basis, as our challenges and our needs change, our focus changes, and there's certainly a lot in motion right now as it relates to Great Salt Lake. So we want statewide planning to keep up with that. Collaboration is also something that was addressed in that 2024 legislation. So the statute now identifies several state and local entities that are necessary contributors to the plan. At the state level, at the state level, these are the entities that are called out. It's worth noting that there are several divisions within the Department of Natural Resources as well as the Department of Environmental Quality that are contributing partners. And we're working with others, even if they aren't listed in statute. For example, we're working with the Office of Energy and Development. They're an important collaborator because as the need to increase our energy production in the near future, that will affect how we manage our water resources. At the local level, the water conservancy districts and the watershed councils are specifically mentioned. Again, we're trying to connect with more than what's called out there. We're really working with the public, which is called out in code. We've done outreach with Utah tribal leaders. I think the point here is we're really trying to get that diverse input to inform the plan. And the plan vision that's guiding this work, it's intentionally simple, but the reality is this isn't simplistic. But I think what's important here with this vision is the balance. It's not asking us to choose between the economy, our communities, or the environment. And these are the 4 goals that we've lined out that the plan must accomplish to move us toward that vision. And I want to discuss each one just briefly in a bit more detail. To ensure long-term water security, we want to make sure that we aren't planning for just one future. Certainly, there's a variety of futures that could be ahead for the state. And we want to make sure that we're embracing innovation and being proactive with water planning. And our state is growing. Ultimately, we need to plan for growth in a way that aligns with our available water resources. And as we grow, we really want to find innovative ways to better coordinate and share data. There's so much great work that's going on all over the state. And so how can we better share data and collaborate so that we can share stewardship of our water resources? With a background as an aquatic ecologist, I'm really excited about this goal. I really feel like this plan update expands and puts more of a focus on protecting our environment than we've seen in our previous plans. And before we dig into the update that we're currently working on, I just want to take a couple of minutes to just step back and take a look at water planning and how it's evolved over the years. Water planning today certainly looks a whole lot different than it did 75 years ago. And that's really a reflection of the priorities and the realities of the time in which they were written. Over time, each plan is responding to new pressures and new information and a changing state. And certainly the water landscape that we live in, it isn't static. Our challenges and our needs are always changing. And the update that we're working on today, that's simply just the next chapter in this evolution. So again, as I mentioned, the first truly comprehensive state water plan that was published in 1990, but planning goes back much further than that. So the first water planning document, this is really the area of planning that's deeply tied to engineering. The plan was focused on capturing and storing water and moving it to where it could support growth and development. So this center on infrastructure, that really made sense for the time. Utah was growing in water planning. It was really about creating certainty through storage and conveyance. And much of the water system that Utah relies on today was built on this vision. Now, by the 1963 planning document, we see a bit of a subtle shift. Planning is still very infrastructure focused, but the lens is widened a bit. The challenge, it wasn't just to capture the water, but to manage it well. And this was the beginning of an idea, I think, that really still shapes our work today. Water security depends on how well our systems function, not just on how much water nature provides. Okay, so by the time we reach that first state water plan, we start to see the scope of water planning expand significantly. Communities were expanding, water uses were diversifying, and the impacts of water decisions are becoming more visible. In this plan, we see entire sections that are devoted to water pollution control, to the importance of fisheries and other aquatic wildlife. And this plan acknowledges water conservation as a necessary tool to manage our water resources. And so this reflects a growing understanding that water planning, it isn't just about delivering water to users, but about protecting water quality, supporting ecosystems, and using water more wisely. By the early 2000s, the conversation becomes a bit more explicit about something Utah's always lived with, but hasn't always necessarily planned around. So the plan acknowledges that water's been made so readily available that its scarcity in a semi-arid climate can be easy to overlook. And I think it makes an important point here. That reality, it needs to be fully recognized if we're going to make appropriate decisions for a growing population. And what's interesting here too is this is a shift from assuming availability to acknowledging limits. So planning is starting to focus on not just meeting demand, but on understanding the conditions that we're planning within. And I think that mindset's pretty foundational to how we think about water planning today. Now, by the most recent plan, we see yet another shift. Water planning that's explicitly tied to climate science, to changing long-term trends, and more frequent extremes. This plan, it also emphasizes the role of science and data and continued collaboration in preparing for the future. And we're certainly still in that era right now. So really, we're looking at planning as building resilience in the face of uncertainty and guiding decisions that hold up under a wide range of conditions. Now, one of the clearest signals that's shaping this update is drought, and not just a single event, but a pattern. We're seeing more frequent and severe drought across the state. This water new year, we are off to a really great start. There were areas in the state that were setting records for the wettest October ever recorded. And that was great. It saturated our soils. It was priming our watersheds for a more efficient runoff this spring. And then we hit a snow drought. And this is a screenshot from December. And I actually looked yesterday, and this image of the state, drought-wise, it hasn't really changed a whole lot. So a lot of our state is headed into spring and some level of drought. And I think it's also important to note this December screenshot, NDIS, they also noted that this was the lowest snow coverage that they'd recorded since the program started back in 2001. So, drought, it's not just a hydrologic condition. It's shaping decisions about growth, about agriculture, about infrastructure. And so this is really becoming a shared question. How do we prepare for a future that may not look like the past? And another clear signal of changing times is the declining levels of Great Salt Lake. I know that is not news to anyone in this room, but for the basins that drain to the lake, this highlights really how local water decisions are connected to statewide outcomes. What happens upstream, it matters downstream. And as you all are already fully aware, the lake reminds us that water planning can't happen in isolation. Now, Lake Powell is telling a different part of the story. This is a picture of Powell back in 2021. And at this time, this was a new historic low since it started filling back in the 60s. And then we hit another record low the next summer, and then again the next summer. And there's current concerns right now about hitting dead pool. And, Lake Powell, it's part of a system that's designed to give us a buffer, some protection against those dry years. And when that buffer shrinks, uncertainty grows. And so this reality, it really reinforces the need for careful planning, for coordination across jurisdictions, and I think a willingness to adapt as conditions change. I don't think we can stress enough how important it is that we pay attention to what's changing around us. Now, when we talk about these indicators of a changing water landscape, it can really bum people out. You all are aware of that just with your work with Great Salt Lake. And with the state water plan, we do not want to send the message that there's nothing that we can do about this. The message that we want to send is that planning for the future is going to require us to start thinking differently about risk, resilience, and responsibility. So with that, I want to just get in to give you kind of a high-level overview of how the state water plan is laid out, how we're trying to address these challenges. And I also want to share some specifics as they relate to Great Salt Lake and the basins that drain to the lake. So the plan will have a total of 9 chapters. Today, I want to drill down into chapters 2 through 8. This is really the meat of the plan. And I also want to address how these chapters address the lake. The lake is not siloed into just one chapter. So chapters 2, 3, and 4, I really see these as the chapters that outline what sort of the limiting or constraining factors are when it comes to how much water we have in our state and what we can do with that water. And then within those constraints, how do we support our ecosystems, our community, and our agriculture? Chapter 8, this will discuss the unique challenges and needs across the 11 basins within Utah. We'll also share a success story. We really want to highlight some aspect of all of the great work that's going on in the basins to help solve water challenges. So diving into each of these chapters in a bit more detail. Chapter 2 will describe the current conditions, and it really establishes the baseline for planning and decision making. This chapter will explain how supply and use are measured, as well as provide a current water budget that details our current supply and current use. Our team just recently finished the water budget model run through 2024, and this figure up on the screen is showing that information. It's showing diversions, depletions, and return flows by major basins and sectors. So we'll be highlighting this sort of information in the plan. And we can break this down by basin. So I've asked our team to just cut out or cull out what is relevant for the basins draining to the lake. And there's a whole lot going on here. So let me just walk you through this. On the left, the green and the purple, this is the diversion volume in 1,000 acre feet. And this is a 5-year average volume of diversions from 2020 through 2024. You can see that the diversions are broken out by surface water, the green, and then the purple, the groundwater. And then those colors are further broken out by the main sectors, so municipal, industrial, and agricultural diversions. Now on the right, we're showing you whether the trends for diversions are increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. And this trend analysis was years 1989 through 2024. For the Great Salt Lake basins combined up on top, you can see that gray color, which indicates that we really aren't seeing a change over the years from the diversions, which is kind of interesting. Now, if you look down on the bottom here, we have it broken out by basin. And so you can see on the far right here where it says ground, it shows whether groundwater diversions are increasing or decreasing. So you can see there's a slight increase in groundwater diversions for the Bear River, Utah Lake, and West Desert basins, whereas for Weber River and for the Jordan River, we're seeing a slight decrease. For surface water, that middle column, you can see that the surface water diversions in the Weber River and then also in the Utah Lake basin, that those are actually decreasing a little bit. Moving on to chapter 3, this will address the risks and unknowns that affect water planning. Climate and population, those are certainly 2 drivers that create uncertainty. So our team will model how these 2 factors can affect supply and demand in the future. And chapter 3, it really frames uncertainty as a planning condition, reinforcing why the lake is vulnerable without collaboration and coordinated management. Chapter 4, this will cover how water is governed and managed in Utah and how it creates some predictability for water users. So we'll cover who does what at the state, regional, and local levels. This includes state agencies like the Division of Water Resources, all the way down to the local irrigation companies. Each has a really important role in planning or developing or regulating or delivering water. We'll highlight all of the key laws and agreements that shape water use in Utah. We'll also talk about water rights and allocation, which includes federally reserved water rights and includes tribal rights. And we'll touch on innovations in how we manage and plan for water, such as the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan, or the UWIP, that aims to improve coordination and funding for water infrastructure projects across the state. For the Great Salt Lake Basin, there's constraints with the existing law, but we're really seeing that there's a lot of opportunities as well. In the last few years, and even in this last legislative session, we're seeing that there's a lot of action that's being taken to help with lake levels. So if we can keep drilling down on how these decisions affect the lake, I think we can also get it where there's more flexibility or room for change in how we manage and govern. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning is at the end of each chapter, we'll provide recommendations on how we can move toward those goals and that vision. And so one of the things that we'll be asking of the council members is to help inform some of those recommendations that will help protect the lake. So moving into chapter 5, we're moving out of those constraint chapters and we're moving into kind of those 3 focus areas. So the state water plan will emphasize the importance of investing in our natural systems. Healthy watersheds and ecosystems, they're one of the most effective and unfortunately one of the most overlooked ways to really build resilience for our water future. Intact watersheds, they provide a multitude of services, such as providing habitat for wildlife, improving water quality, also reducing the severity of flooding and supporting more reliable base flows in those late summer months. The plan will also address the major threats our watersheds face. Pollution, invasive species, and wildfire are certainly major ones that we're focused on as it relates to water quality and quantity and ecosystem health, because these threats can really affect those multitude of services that they provide. And protecting our watersheds is also important because they're a really great place to play. And this in turn is a major economic benefit to many of our communities. In this chapter, we'll specifically highlight the ecological importance of the lake, and we'll highlight the management plans that are already in place to protect the lake, as well as provide recommendations to bolster and expand those programs. And the lake, it supports recreation, it supports tourism, and that sort of bleeds us over into our next chapter on vibrant communities. But before I move on, I do want to say that we intentionally structured these chapters this way so that healthy watersheds and ecosystems is first, because without those being healthy, it's really hard to fully support our communities and our agriculture. So long-term planning will be key to ensure our water resources are ready to support areas with a growing population, ensure that our economic opportunities are set up for success as we see an increase in energy development, especially geothermal and other alternative energy sources, and that we have a strategy in place to seize future opportunities such as hosting the upcoming 2034 Olympics. Ultimately, we need to plan for growth, including the need to grow our energy supply in ways that align with our available water resources. And we want to continue to assess how we can better manage demand by growing water-wise through the use of smart water technology, such as smart irrigation timers. We'll be highlighting all of the rebate programs and incentives and educational workshops that are available to Utahns to help make water-wise decisions. And the plan will continue to stress the importance of secondary water metering, as well as how we can continue to use tiered water rates to reward conservation efforts. And just as we're looking at how we can better manage demand, we'll also look at how we can expand and optimize our supply through planning for repair and replacement of aging infrastructure, through the development of new infrastructure, and implementing projects, and this is statewide, but implementing projects like water reuse, aquifer storage and recovery, and water loss control that can help us to expand and protect our water supplies. And I've already touched on this a bit, but we want to highlight the economic importance of the lake. There's direct connections, such as the importance of wildlife viewing, bird hunting, to indirect connections, such as the lake effect snow that helps support our ski resorts along the Wasatch Front. And now moving on to this last focus area, supporting our agricultural community is going to be key to a resilient water future. Agriculture, it's really the cornerstone of our economy and our identity. And so the state water plan is supporting farmers and ranchers by identifying and highlighting the importance of grant programs and other financial opportunities that are available to them to help producers improve their operations, as well as identifying ways to use water more efficiently, all the while preserving agricultural lands and traditions. So the plan will outline opportunities that are available through these programs. We'll also be digging into best management practices with a focus on sort of two core areas, off-farm and on-farm. So with off-farm, we'll be looking at the improvement of the conveyance system and the measurement and control of water throughout the system. And then on-farm, we'll be looking at best management practices that optimize agricultural water use. Those are usually focused on system infrastructure, as well as the management of crops, soil, and irrigation water application. And I think it's going to be important to discuss how agriculture can be part of the solution as we plan for the lake's water future. It's certainly not separate from it. The plan points out the importance of the brine shrimp industry to aquaculture across the globe. So again, the lake is not siloed into just one chapter. It's touched on across the plan. Now, the final chapter that I would like to discuss is the Basin Perspective chapter, where we highlight challenges and needs and a success. And what's shaping this chapter is our conversation with the watershed councils. It's also informed by what we heard at our public meetings that we held this last summer and into fall. And the council, we asked them to identify challenges and needs within the basin. And those were pretty much echoed by the participants that joined our public meetings. So I want to share just a real high level overview of some of the key takeaways from that. So several shared challenges consistently surfaced across the basins that are connected to Great Salt Lake. Basins are experiencing growing demand and as communities expand, and at the same time, people are concerned about variable and limited water supplies as we head into the future. They're concerned about how drought is going to stress surface and groundwater systems. There's also infrastructure challenges, systems that need maintenance and upgrades, new approaches to address new and evolving needs. And layered over all of this is the need to balance municipal, agriculture, recreation, environmental needs. And these challenges are real. They're showing up in daily decisions and budget conversations. So they really are shaping how we plan together. So just to wrap up, I'd like to share how council members can help shape the plan, as well as how others can engage. For council members, we want to invite you to review and provide feedback on a draft that will be available in May. Right now, we're aiming for early May, so I'm hoping that we can stick with that. We'd also like to hear any recommendations that you all may have to help support efforts to protect the lake. For everyone else that's joining us, we'd also love to have you be part of the process as well. There's still an opportunity to engage in the plan before the final is available in December. So this summer, we're aiming for early July. We'll put the plan out for public comment. At this point, we'll be putting out what we consider to be a final draft, and we'll see if the public agrees that it is indeed the final draft. If you would like to be notified of that public comment period or when the final draft is available in December, please do sign up for email updates. The QR code, it actually will take you to the State Water Plan webpage. You need to scroll down just a little bit, but you'll see the button to sign up for email updates. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd also love to hear any recommendations that you all might have of what you would like to see included in the plan.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the council first? Tom's put his finger on a button, so he's going to talk.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Maybe bringing together what Representative Koford mentioned, our challenge of getting municipalities to conserve at a level that would guide us towards success, at least in the Great Salt Lake Basin. We've seen this act repeated several times through the legislature and for those involved with development or providing homes and businesses. I'm interested in how that is, since that's a central thing that needs to happen for a successful plan on a zero-sum game of the amount of water that is now decreasing with Great Salt Lake, and then Colorado River, is likely to decrease or not get bigger, right? So on that front, where in your plan does it say, here's the amount of water that once we take out a healthy lake and our essential needs for potable drinking water and business, how much is allocated for what I'll call discretionary turf? And I'm not talking agriculture is not discretionary. How is that pointed out? And I'll mention something that I thought was really interesting. I believe it was the general manager for Washington County Water Conservancy District had gone to his communities and said, we don't have enough water to build the number of homes you want unless you use less water per household. And that got the development community actually thinking on their own and saying, well, what if we cut the water by 50, 60, 70%? Well, then you can build a whole lot more homes. That's just a simple math thing. And is that somewhere built into here so that decision is made and put forefront? Because I would hate for the plan to get done and then we all sing kumbaya when we know it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be, in our current water budget, so we do break out indoor from outdoor use. And then when we get into planning for the future, looking at future supply and demand, we do build in some scenarios to look at, what would happen if we continue kind of where we're at right now, and then what happens if we increase our conservation. And with that would include also other things like lot size. I mean, there's kind of a trend going towards building smaller sized lots and decreasing that amount of turf in there. If we don't implement conservation, and I believe it was 2060 is what we kind of put those scenarios out to. And again, as you move further out into time, right, that uncertainty grows. But I believe it was around 475,000 acre feet that we would have a deficit overall across the state. Of course, this varies by basin, and I can get that information to you.
If I can just be a little more clear, I think it'd be helpful for our legislators and our general public to understand, if you want a certain amount of homes with the amount of water we have, here's what you can have. For instance, the past studies would say, would you like to have a lawn or not? Well, if that's not an option, you don't go tell everyone. You get where I'm going with that. I think that the more that we can be clear on the decisions to be made on the pros and cons, and then there's a WIFM, right? If I can build more homes, if I'm just a developer, but yet I allow, as a city council, so I work for a city, it's hard for them to limit development when everyone thinks they want a turf lawn. The developer saves a lot of money. I call it's a tax that's put on a new family and a community if we allow future development to include non-functional turf. It seems we dance around that. We could be dancing another 20 years and still not get there.
Yeah, and I think the more that we can work with municipalities to implement ordinances that, sort of call for what that outdoor landscaping is, I think that's going to be important. So those are things that will be called out in the plan. And I think one of the things that we'd really like to do is work with folks to help champion those efforts so that we can get to that point. I think that's really important. And, I'll just say too, is we really need to decide how we want to grow. There's a lot of conversations about whether or not water really is that limiting constraint, but do we want to double decker I-15 to put more people here? I don't know if that's how we want to grow as a state.
I think Tom's telling you to be bold in preaching conservation. Other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I just want to voice my thanks to Stephanie, being a watershed liaison and being involved in several other groups. I think she's done a good job of canvassing the state and trying to get input across the state. And this is a difficult task to prepare a watershed plan, a state water plan, especially with all the things going on with the Great Salt Lake and things. And I just wanted to thank her for the extensive outreach that I've seen so far.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Comments otherwise? We have one online from Warren.
Thank you, Leland. I just wanted to underline and shout out something that Stephanie's already said, that as these drafts come out, it's really important. I would suggest to get the drafts, read them, mark them up, send them back. I know from past experience that the division's been very responsive, but they need that feedback. It's important. But I wanted to also ask Stephanie a question. Does the plan address the institutional architecture for how we do water management? Is it going to be addressed in the plan, or is that just too bold of an undertaking?
Warren, can you expand on institutional
architecture? I was afraid you would ask that. But how do we make water decisions? How do we coordinate between agencies? Do we have clear authority in the areas where it is needed? Those are some pretty hefty questions, but I wondered if that helps understand what I mean by institutional architecture. Are we structured properly or ideally or optimally for how water decisions are made, water management decisions are made, how forward planning is done, and so on? Or as you've put this plan together, have you seen areas where maybe we could improve our game by maybe some adjustments to how we've built the water management agencies and so on?
I'll take a crack at answering that. I've been with the Division of Water Resources since January of 2025, so I don't know if I have the institutional background to fully answer that. But I will say that I've been really impressed working on the state water plan with all of the collaboration and communication with our sister agencies, with the local water conservancy districts, the watershed councils. And to me, that's a big part of it, is just breaking down those silos and having everyone communicate so that we can really identify maybe where some of those gaps are at. I think there's always improvements, though, and I think that we've seen that with a lot of the legislation that's coming through. We're finding those areas where we can change how we manage and govern water.
I think if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd go a step along with Stephanie. We've got really great people and very dedicated people. We couldn't ask for better. But are we doing things that hold them back is my big concern.
Thank you. He's asking for a benevolent water master who is all powerful.
and omniscient. We need omniscient there too, Leland.
There you go. Other comments or questions from the? Go ahead.
I think that's a great concept when we talk about coordination and collaboration. And what I see is a lot of airplanes, flying around, and with an air traffic controller, trying to find intersecting interests and trying to get everybody on the same page. And there's so many organizations that are doing such great things. And I think the creation of the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office is huge to have that. We also, have the Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape, which is a fairly new designation. And the entire intent of that organization, which many of you are partners of, is to provide that platform to do collaboration and coordination. And so far it's working quite well. But I think that's imperative to have, every time I come here, I learn all these different things that are taking place. And, having that ability to crosswalk ideas and exchange, best practices, coordinate priorities and resources. I think that always we can do better. But I think we're making some real strides in that regard. And I think having the Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape is a huge step towards attaining that goal. Thanks.
Thank you. Got another comment out here?
Thank you. I love your analogy of all of the planes in flight, Tyler. I was just wondering, among those planes are the watershed councils, and your reference to the opportunities that come from those perspectives and those on the ground observations. But there is no funding for watershed councils, and I was wondering if that is something that in short order we might be able to find funding to help enliven their contributions a little more effectively.
I don't know that I'm the appropriate person to answer that. I'm all for it. I've met with the watershed councils and I hear the frustration of the things that they'd like to do, but needing that funding. I'm hoping that comes in future legislative sessions so that folks can, the Division of Water Resources, we are fully behind supporting the watershed councils. So I think that would be great. As a non-regulatory agency, the Division of Water Resources doesn't have that power, but that might be something that we could maybe touch on in the plan of supporting those local groups.
Other comments?
Yeah, just a question. Is the plan ultimately going to provide guidance? Is it going to make policy recommendations? Is it going to identify issues to start out with right at at the start? I mean, is it going to be an action document that we can look to?
That is the plan for what we would like to do. We'd like to provide actionable steps and strategies, and we'd like to do that at the individual, local, and state levels for folks. One of the things that's really great with collaborating with our sister agencies and other folks is finding folks that can help us to champion those efforts. So what do we want to accomplish, and who is the right person to kind of put behind guiding on that? Our section, we have 2 staff, and so that'll be part of what we do in January of 2027 is starting to help move those forward. But yes, the plan is to provide actionable steps and strategies that are clear.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we want to thank Stephanie and for the presentation today and for the information, and encourage everyone here to comment on the plan and provide feedback when that May timeframe rolls around. And perhaps, Angela, you could get a link to it when it's available and send it out to the council members.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're up to our public comment period. Do we have any public comment other than Lynn, who is going to publicly comment to us?
I just want to thank the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council once again for your sponsorship, support of the Great Salt Lake Issues Forum. This will be an opportunity for us to recognize what we've accomplished since 2024 and management issues, practices, policies, and research. So I look forward to hosting you all, and thank you again for your support and your important work.
We have a comment online from Soren.
Good morning. I'm sorry I can't be there in person because I have a couple meetings back to back and didn't have the time to travel where you are, but good to see you online and listen in. I have just one thought. Many of you know my role with the Jordan River Commission and providing staff support to the Jordan River Watershed Council. We're grateful to have Heidi there representing us today. We have been thinking a lot about, how to get messages out. There was a lot of discussion when Representative Koford was presenting earlier about, how mandates versus, building just the desire for individuals to get involved and engaged. And I think there are many people that want to know what to do, but they don't often know how to do it. We often rely on government agencies to be the communicators on this, but they're not always effective at reaching the masses. I know a lot of people follow closely what happens with their city councils and with the state legislature, but many people don't. And we've been doing a lot of brainstorming with the Jordan River Commission about, what are effective messengers of some of these issues around conservation, around water quality and stewardship. And we actually think that engaging faith communities would be a really valuable tool. We have a predominant faith in much of Utah, but there are many faith communities. All of them have substantive beliefs and values around caring for the earth. And that's often looked at very broadly, but we know here in the Wasatch Front region, it's very specific. We have a lake that needs our help. And so I would love to challenge the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council and all of the watershed councils that are working around a healthy lake and a healthy riparian system that feeds the lake, to think how we might employ faith communities from every religious background, but including our predominant faith organizations at the regional level to help tackle this really important regional challenge that we have. You know, I know we've had a governor who is part of our major faith community asking people to pray for rain and for water and moisture. And some could argue that that maybe has been effective. You know, his call for rain resulted in a pretty wet February and early March. But there's so much more than we need to be doing on the conservation front. I'm a member of that faith community as well. And I know I hear people in my congregation saying, we prayed for rain and it came, and so we don't have to worry so much. And I'm like, no, we're in a long-term drought. Climate change and water consumption are affecting the lake. And so, you know, I'd love to just find ways to how we can meaningfully engage faith communities, because that is a really big motivator for so many people in many faith, faith communities, and would love to find some ways to help build messages that can be developed and encourage the proliferation of that message across faith communities in our region. So just a thought about, you know, trying to engage really effective messengers on this really, really important topic for a healthy lake and watershed system.
Thank you. That's a good comment. Any other comments?
Thanks, Leland. I've been working on water in Utah for about 30 years, and before that I worked in other parts of the country. And the project that brought me to Utah was the Central Utah Completion Act, the Central Utah Project. And I would ask, you know, at all levels to understand kind of how that was a really unique, successful project. I understand it took 30 years of negotiation with the Fed to get that agreement in place. And I'll offer a couple of things that could be tools that we are tested and would carry to the future. So I worked 18 years at Salt Lake City, and now I've been at Sandy for almost 10. And that agreement, both Sandy and Salt Lake through Metropolitan Water have a petition to the Central Utah Completion Act water. And a couple of requirements of receiving water would be to meet certain conservation goals that were specifically in the contract. And if you did not meet that goal, you had to pay back to Central Utah huge amounts of money. Now that money came back into conservation because we don't need more money, we need more water. We can go find money in other parts of the country, but we can't find water and bring it here. So I think that's a really tested model that was used for those cities that started 100 years ago, and that could work really well for those that want to grow now, the nascent communities. And so it becomes a self-feedback loop and funds what they need to do. The second part of that I would add is that act required environmental water development, agricultural water efficiency projects, and those commitments were all tied into a holistic system. I see lots of elements of what we're doing with our plan. Where'd Stephanie go? I can't see with the light, but I really love what I'm hearing and seeing and where we can repeat that. The other reason I offer that out is that there's a memory within the older community and a recognition in the newer community. Hey, that worked. You know, that restored, if you look over between Deer Creek and Jordanelle, that used to not be a beautiful river flowing there. That was the money from the Central Utah Project, paid for by Salt Lake and Sandy and those that are receiving that water. I know many other districts get that. So I would add in those elements that people are familiar with. One of our big obstacles has been getting our legislators, our municipal leaders to get on board. And if we can point to something like, well, this is like this other program that worked really well, how can we use that here? So thank you.
Good comment. Any more? One more?
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself to the council. I'm the new director of the Division of Water Resources. I know many of you, but there's a few new faces. As you know, Candace Hassenjaeger decided to take on a new challenge and go over and lead the Division of Water Quality. So I am excited to work with you through our great team at Water Resources. I know you know many of our team, and appreciate the coordination that we've had with so many of you. Excited to collaborate on water conservation efforts. I know we appreciate the Water Conservancy districts and helping to administer the landscape incentive program, removing unnecessary grass and putting in water-wise plants, and then also our conservation efforts with toilet replacement and smart controllers. And would love to be involved in those conversations and see what we can do to help further the conservation in the state, because we do see that as being really important going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll close our public comment period. We have other member discussion. Do we have any council recommendations on council issues, priorities, future council meetings that we want to bring up at this point? Seeing none, and getting to our last item on the agenda, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We got a motion in a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.